But we're going to look at another group of voters who could play a decisive role this election year. They are Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Last week, I traveled to the Central Valley and the South Bay to report on the growing political clout of these diverse communities.
Have you heard about the new top 2 primary law?
With the California primary around the corner, get out the vote efforts are in full swing. The prime target at this Santa Clara County phone bank, a voting bloc whose political potential is on the rise.
In the city of San Jose, 1 out of every 10 people who go to the polls will be Vietnamese. And what that tells you is the Asian influence is significant.
But if the feedback these volunteers are getting is any indication, both political parties could do more to reach one of the most diverse electorates in the U.S.
We have been able to talk to a lot of people in their language, and they say, nobody's ever called me before. Nobody's ever talked to me about voting before. Some of them have just become citizens, and they say this is their first time voting, and they didn't know anything about the process, so they're very grateful that somebody's called them.
According to the 2010 census, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are now the fastest growing racial group in America. While California has the largest population in the continental U.S., the ranks of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have also swelled in potential battleground states, a factor which could have major significance in the upcoming election.
For Asian Americans, the percentage of the population is slowly changing too in these key battleground states. And I think both parties, if they're going to play geopolitics, have to understand that Asian Americans are going to be a potential swing vote.
A recent poll of Asian Americans revealed 59% favor Barack Obama over 13% for Mitt Romney, but 27% remain undecided in the presidential race. The chance for swing vote potential hasn't gone unnoticed by Democrats, who recently launched a national get-out-the-vote effort led by party vice chair Congressman Mike Honda.
Historically, people looked at Asian Americans as a marginalized population because it's too small, but we turned that into a margin of victory, say that 1%, 3% margin of your votes can make a difference whether you win or lose. How you guys doing?
Since 2001, Honda has represented the 15th district in the heart of Silicon Valley. This year he's running in the newly drawn 17th district, the first outside Hawaii to have a majority Asian population. We caught up with him in San Francisco's Japantown. It's clear his influence in the community stretches far beyond his home turf.
Mike Honda. Yeah. Good man. Good man.
Congressman Honda has been a tireless worker for his entire constituency. But for Asian Americans, he gives us a face as arguably the most famous legislative leader for Asian Americans.
Honda was influential in bringing President Obama to speak at a major Asian American gala in May.
If somebody is suffering through injustice or inequality, we take up their cause as if it was our own. That's the story of America. And that's certainly the story of this community.
To have the President of the United States come to an Asian American Pacific Islander gala was a first. And he went through a litany of information about Asian American and our issues and what we care about, and was probably the most precise speech I ever heard anybody give.
Mahalo. Well, these Hawaiians here, yeah? What's up with that?
And these are Asian Americans. We're supposed to be quiet. Man, we were rambunctious and happy, and it was historic.
The number of Asian Americans holding political office is also on the rise. This year, a record number are running for Congress, including 25-year-old Lodi native Ricky Gill.
I'm Ricky Gill. For those of you who don't know, I'm candidate for the United States Congress in California's 9th District.
Gill has been designated a young gun by the Republican Party and has already raised nearly $1 million in a tight race against Democratic incumbent Jerry McNerney. He has been endorsed by leading Republicans like the national chair of the party and Majority Whip Kevin McCarthy. Gill says it's time for Asian Americans to take the spotlight.
You know, in the first generation, I know that was the concern that my family had, which was bread and butter. You know, what are you going to do to put food on the table? Those are real, God-honest concerns that immigrant families have. My family certainly had it. And now in the next generation, after that provision of opportunity has happened for your children, there's an expectation of bigger and broader involvement. And I think that's happening now. As farmers, you only get paid once a year, so the harvest in September is the most important time. And
Gill, the son of doctors who immigrated from India to the San Joaquin Valley, grew up working in the family's vineyard. They own over 1,000 acres.
If you're a South Korean business owner or an Indian American physician or a Hispanic small business owner, you want fewer regulations and red tape stifling you from really engaging the free enterprise system. If the Republican Party becomes the party of balancing the budget, of educational choice, of skilled immigration reform, I would subscribe to that as being fair. Hi, how are you? I wanted to introduce myself. My name's Ricky Gill. My name's Ricky Gill. I'm running for Congress here.
Gill is hoping his farming roots will play well with other key constituents in this agricultural district. On the day we visited, he was working the crowd at the Lodi Zen Fest.
I would really like for you to check into the water system.
Okay.
Water around here is very important.
This community is really beginning just to tap, I think, their political potential, where Asian Americans are also really not just voting, but also running for political office. To me, that's a higher level of political participation. And I think we're finally seeing that happen, not just Asian Americans getting elected, but sustaining it over time. So to me, that's exciting.
Well, he seems like a very, very impressive guy, but let's face it, he's not old enough to be a congressman yet. So my question is there something else that's changed in the political landscape, i.e. money, that's enabling him to do that?
The money is important. I'd say Ricky Gill is a rising star in the Republican Party, young as he is, because he represents a new dynamic when you talk about demographics. Indian Americans, Harmeet Dillon here in San Francisco, Dr. Ami Bera in Sacramento, and the money is pouring in on these folks. The super PACs this time around are taking a big look at California and saying this is the state that could change the control of Congress. And so on both sides, Democratic and Republican, they're starting to play. Karl Rove's group, Crossroads, one of them. And this is, we're talking, when Dan is mentioning the Berman-Sherman race in Los Angeles, this is a race where there's actual super PACs for specific races for Berman. I mean, so we've just seen the outcome of this Citizens United. There's a wash of money coming through.
And it helps that Ricky Gill's parents are very, very well off, and he's grown up in a very rich environment. And as he said, that culture fits with the Republican Party more than it fits with some Democratic ideas.
It could be, yeah, and I think this is why I think the money aspect of it is getting so interesting this time around.
Well, and the other thing about money is that the tobacco industry seems to be spending a great deal of money on Proposition 29, which would put a pack tax on.
And Jerry's absolutely right. On the initiatives, this is where we also see money pouring into California. How many millions of the tobacco? It's 40-something million dollars. This is an issue that people are going to be watching. Tobacco tax, cure cancer. On the other hand, you've seen the ads. This is something that's going to be in place for 15 years here in California, and I think there's the debate right there.
Dan, we want to get your thoughts on super PACs and what they're going to do.
Well, the super PACs are heavy, and we'll see more of it in the fall. But this tobacco thing, I think the thing to watch about this tobacco, if that goes down, if that measure goes down, it could tell us something about the fate of these tax measures that are going in the November ballot. And whatever money we're seeing in this June ballot on those two ballot measures, it'll be peanuts compared to what flows into the state in November, when we may have a dozen ballot measures, taxes, union, political money. There's some heavy-duty stuff on that ballot in November. We're going to see tremendous tens and tens of millions of dollars spent on ballot measures in California in November.
Do you think there'll be a lot of talk, well, by the time we get to November? I mean, we're all saying jobs, jobs, economy, economy, but here it's where the lines are and who's getting money from whom and which party is going to put more millions into California than the other. Are we missing something here?
No, I think the jobs and the economy will be the dominant issue in a lot of close races. Listen, California is still in the economic soup. We still have an extremely high unemployment rate, one of the highest in the country. And you saw the new jobs report that just came out. It's pretty miserable. And California isn't getting any better. I think the economy will be the dominant issue in November, and I think it will play into these tax measures, particularly into these tax measures that are beyond the ballot.
Yeah, I agree with Dan on that.
Richard, what does this do then for minority candidates who are trying to break into politics? I mean, that's what this top 2 is all about, giving more people opportunity.
Well, you know, as Dan was saying, what I thought immediately is that, you know, when you've got a lot of money on the table, the only thing you can do to counter money is if you've got people. And so for the Democrats, it's all going to be all about registration and mobilization, because if you can't bring people out, they're dead. And it's going to be important to not just admire the fact that a lot of Latinos are Democratic voters now, but you got to get them to the ballot, and you got to get them to the polling place. This will be important for the president, but it will also be important for Governor Brown, because his tax initiative probably doesn't stand a chance if a key component of the Democratic base is not there to vote.
Okay, back to the money guys.
Yeah, no,
there are a few of them that stand out as being active in our state.
When we talk about money, we have to talk about, like, at the presidential level too, because we've just seen President Obama come in, and he's coming back next week again for 2 fundraisers in San Francisco. Why? Because, I mean, people are looking. He had that Asian American Business Roundtable last time he was here, another sort of nod to the importance of the Asian vote.
First president to do that, I understand.
That's right. But, you know, they paid $38,000 to sit down with him, and he's doing another small roundtable here in San Francisco. We hear next Wednesday. I mean, Romney was just here picking up a ton of money. We were with him in Hillsborough watching that happen. The fact is, the money in California is important, and people are looking at how these presidential races too are going to affect down the ballot. If Republicans aren't excited about getting out there and voting for Romney, will that hit the rest of the ballot?
We're down to 1 minute, which attracts the union dollars, pension reform.
The unions are going to be huge in this.
Yeah,
I mean, they're going to be putting every nickel they can beg, borrow, or steal into the measure to defeat the so-called paycheck protection measure. That's good. That's showdown. That's Armageddon. That's like what's going on in Wisconsin. That's like life or death to the unions.
And I think before that, the pension matter in San Jose, where they're going to try to change the benefits for existing employees, not future employees.
And another
that's really closely watched.
And another pension benefit measure in San Diego too, just about the same sort of thing.
Exactly.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. I was having a lot of fun here. I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. You, Dan, especially from Sacramento there. You'll find a link to KQED's ongoing election coverage at kqed.org/thisweek.